Yes, I find that very convincing to suggest that these texts had all this information that we only found out hundreds of years later through other types of experimentation. That would be very convincing, but the fact is that's never happened.
So what happens to the era prior to the scientific method?
What do you mean the era prior to the
era, obviously there was in human history a time when this scientific method that you are relying on currently as a yardstick was not present.
Well, it depends how you look at it. The scientific method was formally established in the 16 and 1700s by the Western philosophers in Europe. However, when you really look at it, human beings have been using the scientific method from day one.
Exactly.
Because the progress wouldn't have been possible. The first caveman that banged two rocks together and realized the white one is always harder than the yellow one. Even animals have had to use these processes to get by. The fact of the matter is through direct experimentation of the physical world, you come to repeatable experiments which give you a set of data.
Let me get this right. Are you suggesting that a magical dimension was in play when all this was happening? No, I'm just asking. Because when you talk about the scientific method that we were having a conversation about, we know what we are talking about, its formulation, etc. You have referred to the 16th, 17th century, we might beg to differ on that. But then the brother here at the back also said, well, actually before time, so we are going to the...
before humans, he said.
Before humans, sorry. So, question here is, are we attributing a certain kind of method to something that cannot be verifiable?
I don't know what you mean.
That would be magical,
but
according to your definition.
Can you say that again? Are we attributing what?
Right. This scientific method, no answer. This scientific method that we are relying on, yes? As I was pointing out to you prior to the time this scientific method was established, you said to me, no, we can see it, I would call it collectively nature, and he said also before humans. So what are we attributing to this?
That is a silly question, because the fact is that human beings formally established and defined the scientific method in, say, the 15th, 16th centuries. However, using it was something that is practically inescapable. You can't not use it, because it's just a way of how the world works and a way of conscious creatures to start understanding how the world works.
So according to the logic that I'm understanding, please do correct me, are you saying that we are in a position now to use the scientific method the way we are understanding it now absolutely against everything?
No, because it has its limits as well.
Well, if it has got limits, is there a possibility that establishing our conclusions based on what you are agreeing has a limited outcome is false?
No, because when no one's claiming, science doesn't give you absolutes. If science was claiming absolutes, then that criticism would be valid. But because science isn't, that criticism is irrelevant. Science works by building tentative models about how the world works based on the experimentation of trying to falsify hypotheses. Based on doing that again and again and again, and revising the hypothesis, doing another experiment, revising it, and trying to get closer and closer to how the world actually works, we build a model. For example, the theory of gravity, the laws of motion, basic things like that. We build these models because of their repeatability, verifiability, and resilience to all different types of testing, and being extrapolated to different fields and different areas and different scales, and they still hold true. Therefore, we use them as a basis to make a model. We still don't say that gravity is an absolute, because that's not how science works.
Actually, what you have actually told me right now is just details of the scientific method. I didn't ask you that.
Tell you why it doesn't give me your criticism, because your criticism was that therefore it can't give you. It can still be possible that something you get through science might be wrong. Yes, we admit that. All scientists admit that.
If I can just say, when you say we, I know, and I'm sure you are aware, that the word science actually only means knowledge.
So what? We're not talking about the etymology of the word.
Sorry, if I can just. You see, it's not about etymology. It is the you against us that you are somehow projecting.
Well, do you not agree that the scientific method is the best way to find things out in the physical world?
If I can just finish.
Then there is a you and us.
Not at all. I don't have a problem. Okay.
So you agree that the scientific method is the best way to find out things in the physical world?
I didn't say that.
So there is a you and us.
I didn't say that. If that is what you want to think subjectively, no problem. But like I said, I'd rather deal with the evidence and see what the evidence says. Having said that,
and evidence is a fundamental principle of science.
Prior to the scientific method, and again, if you are going to tell me that, and I'm saying to you, actually the word science only means knowledge, it can apply right across the board. Do you agree?
If you use that.
No, do you agree?
If you use that definition of
Yes.
its meaning, then of course, because you
It
made
does,
it such
doesn't
a broad meaning.
Not at all. Actually, you and the brother at the back already agreed with me
That what?
without realizing it, because you did tell me before we formally identified the method, it was already being used.
Yeah.
Right across the board? Yes. You have to agree with me.
Right across the board. Well, to some extent, we all have to use the scientific method.
So you're agreeing with me?
If you touched a kettle and it burnt your hand, your finger, if anybody touched a kettle and burnt your finger, wouldn't you see that as an experiment that gave you some data about that kettle?
I'm not disagreeing, I'm agreeing.
Right,
But
so
what
on
I'm
that-
saying to you, answer, you are agreeing with me on this
Yeah,
point.
he's saying we agree with him.
You are agreeing with me.
No,
that-
you didn't
I'm
agree
sorry,
with
what
that.
is your name, brother?
No, it doesn't matter. But you
Why does it not matter? I'm Shabir. You are?
It doesn't matter.
Why?
Why don't you
Okay,
just-
anyway,
what
I'll
I'm
listen
saying-
to the
what I'm
point.
saying-
The point here that is
Now
being
you're
made.
saying that we agree with you. You didn't agree with him when he said about scientific principle went before 1600 or whatever. You went, but now suddenly, magically, you've agreed with it, saying that we agree with you.
I would suggest,
I don't get that.
brother, I would suggest it seems like there was selective hearing, because I was following the reasoning here, and I was making it very clear that look, when you are going to identify a particular method by which you are establishing certain facts, yeah, and he honestly told me that look, subjectively he thought X, Y, and Z. We moved on to the scientific method. Then when I said, what about the people prior to the scientific method? Yeah, he said one thing, you then said no, also prior to the humans. So now you are actually agreeing with what I said, that look, at the end of the day, if you have a yardstick, yes, that yardstick ought to be the guide to establish evidentially whether the point you are making is valid or not. At this moment in time, I only want to explore how it is that you are using a method which, when I asked, can it be applied right across the board? You first said no. And then I said, well, if you think about...
Depending on the definition.
There we are. So what would the definition be?
Bro, are you,
Back
are
again
you
to the
genuinely
same.
pretending not to understand this?
No,
You're not
honestly.
pretending.
I am...
Okay, so he's not pretending not to understand this. I'll explain it again.
Brother, no, one second.
Brother,
If I can just
let's not be
finish and
silly.
then...
You're pretending not
who
to
is being
understand
silly
this,
here?
yeah? I'll explain it again.
No,
If
answer. You are getting emotional.
Brother,
Calm
if
down.
you define the scientific
Listen.
method according to how it was done by the rationalist philosophers of the 17th century, then that is a formal, defined, detailed method. However, the essence of the method is quite simply to see something, wonder why it happened, design a way of testing your thought of why it happened, and move on from there. You can put it down to that. And human beings did do that without realizing it. The way that a child will come up and touch a kettle, burn his finger, and not do it again because of that procedure of the scientific method. They don't realize that's what they're doing. They don't realize that's what they're doing. But the fact is, they are still employing the scientific method for doing that. Now, that's what he was trying to say. And I don't know exactly what your point is, but
I think you are getting confused.
When you define the scientific method to be just knowledge, well, of course, everybody always done it because everybody always found some knowledge.
So you are agreeing with me,
Bro,
finally.
I said it's because
Right,
of the
answer,
definition.
listen. No, not a problem. You see, I asked about the yardstick, I asked about definitions. At the end of the day, you've got to accept there's a possibility you may be totally wrong, and there's a possibility I may be totally wrong.
Yes.
And the only way we can arrive at a reasonable conclusion instead of discounting things like that is to look at the evidence. And that is what I'm considering here, that when we are going through the process of accepting things, discounting things, we automatically have, according to what you said, there's an intuition about certain things, yeah? But the scientific method cannot be applied to intuition, can it?
What?
You weren't listening, were you?
I was
Answer.
listening.
What did I say?
The scientific method can't be applied to intuition.
So tell me, yes or no?
Well, the scientific method as we know it so far, when you say it can't be applied to intuition, what exactly do you mean? Like, we can't have an explanation for why we have intuition, or we can't use intuition in a scientific way? I mean, I don't know what you're trying to say.
Okay, I will go according to your reasoning here, okay? Intuition, you used the word intuition. You said, my intuition told me. Yeah, when I asked about the yardstick. Now I'm saying whatever that intuition was, applying the scientific method to it, can I arrive at a reasonable evidence-based conclusion about what intuition is?
About what intuition is?
Yeah, because you used it as a yardstick.
No, I said that was one aspect of why I became suspicious.
Okay, one
of Islam.
aspect
And
of a
the other-
yardstick.
And it was more than that, which is my life experiences and me
yeah,
comparing
I
with other
understand.
people.
Yeah,
It wasn't just that.
Yeah, but if we can just deal with this issue.
Right, yeah. So with intuition, I would not say that I could scientifically disagree with Islam being true based on my intuition. That's a biased, subjective opinion-based view, and I wouldn't have used that on its own as a reason to discount Islam.
So are you saying in the affirmative that you can't apply the scientific method to intuition?
No, I don't know about that. I don't think I'm in a position to be able to tell you for sure. The way I see it is that intuition is an aspect of human behavior, human psychology. There are scientific explanations for why we have it, but I don't think that's what you're asking about.
What are the scientific explanations?
That is a characteristic developed over evolution because it has survival traits.
Intuition?
Evolution, yeah.
Intuition is as a result.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Where did you read that?
Well, that's the best explanation I could think of.
Where did you get this explanation? I'm not trying to be picky, I'm just saying because...
Well, this is the thing, is we don't know how to test for intuition, but knowing that it gives people a survival value, meaning that, do you think intuition is something that is totally...
No, I just want you to answer it first before I give you mine.
Is intuition separate from your senses?
No, let's get over that one before we move on to
intuition,
something else.
Some people say it's a magical way of knowing that someone's looking at you or knowing if someone's going to try and stab you, some crap like that, Now, the scientific...
Is that what you accept?
The scientific explanation of how intuition works is that our brains and our senses are far more in tune with the world than we actually think most of the time. We smell things, see things, the tiniest little movement, the look in somebody's eye, maybe a little shadow movement, and we call a lot of those behaviors that we react upon as intuition because we're not in tune with every little thing that our brain is picking up.
Frankly, answer, you are really making the admission you don't know.
So?
Okay, let's move on. It was easier, so we can move on.
Yeah, but I told you how I'd think of it at the moment.
No.
I can't know that for sure.
No, I did ask you that when you said intuition, well, through evolution, and when I tried to push it forward, you tried to take it away. I don't mind.
Take it away where?
Even I don't know where, actually.
Evolutionary explanation.
And what
wasn't that an evolutionary explanation for intuition?
I'm here, yes. You see, what was an evolutionary explanation?
That we developed this intuition because it has a survival...
what did you say, survival?
How do you say it? A survival benefit?
Okay, let's go for that. Survival benefit. How do we evidentially establish that?
We don't.
Thank you. Okay, now if we can't, the point I'm making is just going back to the original point that me and you were starting off with. You see, at the end of the day, if I confidently am asserting a certain position, and when I'm looking at the details, I come across every 2-3 questions and I say, well, I don't know, I'm not sure, I don't know, I'm not sure. On what definitive basis can I hold my position?
Yeah, and that's, like I said to you near the beginning, is that we don't claim to have absolute.
Who is we?
It's the scientific explanations for the world. The naturalistic.
Are you talking human beings?
No, the naturalistic
or a specific group of people?
For the world that I refer to most of the time, they don't claim to have an absolute explanation. Yeah, so of course there's a possibility that there's some bits that we don't understand, some bits where we get to and we say
we're working on understanding.
Yeah, but we are working towards understanding them, and at the moment we have to say we're not sure yet. There's millions of theories for that particular aspect. Now, if you use our inability to define or explain intuition as a way of rejecting
as one example
of rejecting evolution, I don't think that's really relevant because that's a tiny little thing.
Brother, how did you conclude that I'm... No, answer. It seems like you have got preconceived notions here and you are projecting them on me. I don't mind, that's up to you. But I never once discounted evolution. And you automatically... I can understand why... Sorry, answer. I can automatically see why you are discounting many things without actually considering the evidence appropriately. But that's yours, yeah? At the end of the day...
What's your point again?
You missed it again.
No,
okay, I'll tell you what it is. Answer. No, respectfully, I just want us to understand where we are coming from. Yeah, all I wanted to know was that when you made such affirmative statements, and then if I can just finish, affirmative statements of why you left Islam, yes, one automatically assumed you looked at the evidence rather, and all you have told me, well, actually not necessarily, but I did come across certain things, and then you suddenly introduce the word magic. Every time you disagree, you use the word magic.
Okay.
And to me it seems like, if I can finish, answer, and then you can, to me it seems like, okay, you have a certain mindset, and no matter what evidence is going to be provided to you, you are not going to accept, because you have automatically labeled it magical.
Right.
Now, when I explored it further, it suddenly came to the situation where you actually accepted something totally magical, but you are trying to put a scientific spin on it.
Like
My
totally
perspective, if I
magical?
can, my perspective.
What did I accept to be totally
if I
magical?
can, I'm sorry, if I can just finish and then I'll tell you. Yeah.
I didn't accept
Okay?
anything totally magical.
No.
You were just being ridiculous. What did I accept that was totally magical?
Well,
Tell me.
I might not actually.
Tell
Look,
me, innit? You just
answer,
said that about me.
answer
Tell
in
me
a
what it is.
conversation. We don't need to use words like ridiculous, stupid, etc.
Bro,
I'm sure we can
you
have a
said
reasonable
that
conversation.
I
Yeah?
agreed in a totally magical
You did.
explanation.
Like what? I'll tell you. When I asked you about intuition, yes, and we talked about how the scientific method, I said, what about prior to the scientific method? You relied on the naturalistic explanation. The gentleman at the back said, even before the humans. I said, right. And when I asked you, okay, how do you define it? You said you don't know. So you relied on something magical.
No, not knowing something doesn't mean I made up a magical explanation for it.
Do we know
I don't
everything
what he's
about the
talking
creator?
Right, so he's saying...
Answer,
that
why are you talking to them? I'm here. I'm only talking to you. But I'm only talking to you.
I don't care, I'll let you speak.
Oh, right, well, if that is the case.
Bro, I let you speak, let me speak.
Answer.
I'll speak to you if it means that much to you.
Answer.
Yeah?
No,
The
no,
fact
it's
of the matter-
not meaning. Just let's have a civil conversation and respect.
Alright, you don't,
I'm doing
you don't
that.
define how we have a conversation, yeah?
I'm not
You-
defining, I'm
you
merely
guys,
suggesting.
You guys came to get me
Answer.
to have this talk.
I
Please-
didn't.
So please don't force, please
I
don't
didn't.
force me into
I
doing
won't
things your
force
way.
you.
Right, so let me do
Nobody
things my
can.
way. You are saying that because I had to admit at some point in the scientific model of explanation of things, there is some non-fact or some place where we have to admit we don't know for sure. Because of that, which you can always find out in any topic in science, he then says, therefore you had to have relied on a magical explanation. No. I will refer to the scientific models and explanations of things which can be repeatedly tested and verified by independent people as far as that they are convincing. When we get to a very specific aspect of an established theory and we are not sure exactly because we don't have the tools to test it, or maybe it's just that difficult to get there to test, whatever, we have to admit we don't know on those things. So he comes along and says, oh well, eventually I got you to say you don't know about something and therefore you still thought it was true, so you believe in magic. Guys, when did I refer to a magical explanation, a magical dimension, or anything like that? I seek to explain within the natural world as far as it's convincing. Yeah, as far as it's convincing. When there are gaps and limits to our knowledge, I'll just say, I don't know about that. We don't know about that. Let's see what the experts say. And most of them might say, we don't know about that for sure either. That's why there are a number of different theories out there which have to be peer reviewed and repeatedly tested until we do get a better picture. And even then it's not a guaranteed absolute fact, which is what he's fishing for. Yeah? I can only explain it like that, my friend.
Oh, you're talking to me? Okay. Right. Well, number one, I'm not fishing for absolutes because I was only asking you about how you thought. Now, if it came across like that, then it comes back to you. Number one. Number two, when I'm speaking to you and I'm talking about establishing certain facts, I constantly told you, why don't we consider the evidence? You are the one who used the word intuition, so I explored that a bit with you. And when I did explore it and it went a bit further, you did become uncomfortable, as you are right now. Why? Because, oh, well, it was a dead end, really. And I was exploring that. Because when we are wanting to establish certain things, and I have noticed that every time you constantly repeat the scientific method, although as though it gives validity to your argument, well, respectfully, it doesn't. Okay, you are merely repeating what you've already said 3 times. However, having said that, I wanted to explore, which I'm still trying to explore, that when you are so reliant on a method, the scientific method, did you apply it to everything? And when I said, can we apply it to the intuition? Yes, you were basically stuck, okay? The bottom line, as it were, answer is this, that I respect your views in relation to how you viewed things, and on that basis left Islam. I have no problem with that. What I do have a problem with is when individuals, and I'm not only talking about you, when individuals are claiming the superior position on the basis of the scientific method, and when it is explored just for a few minutes, it all crumbles to bits, then I have a situation where I'm considering whether the individual I'm speaking to actually has the necessary evidence to be able to formulate a reasonable conclusion. And that's what I was... Shall we cut it?
No, carry on, sorry.
You sure? Okay. Yeah? At the end of the day, you see, brother,
Yeah.
I have only one view. We all learn by talking to each other. We have disagreements. It is normal in conversation. But the basis for what we are discussing ought to be evidence, and that evidence, once produced, should be considered logically, rationally, and reasonably. Now, I did notice, and I've said this to you, Ansar, that many a time when you are talking, as soon as you introduce this element of a creator or anything associated, you use the word magical. Magical this, magical this, magical that.
Yes.
And the moment I used it where it was appropriate,